What is up, guys? Max here, and welcome back to another After Effects tutorial. Now, in today's tutorial, we will be learning how to make this cute little logo animation for your videos. Super fun and easy, shouldn't take too long, so let's get started. But right before we get started, if you don't feel like following the tutorial, jump down into the description and download the project file. There's a link. You're going to hate me, but it's an easy way to support the channel so I can keep making dumb videos for all you guys. When I say dumb videos, I mean videos that are fun for everybody. Alright, I'm just going to shut up and let's start the tutorial. So now that we have After Effects open, we can kind of dissect what's going on here. As you can see, this color slide on, a shape flies out, it flips across the screen, there's some little accent animations, and a logo flies in, where you can place your own logo, stuff like that. Doesn't matter, real quick and easy. Yeah, let's make this. So, first things first, we need to open up our project bin inside of After Effects. It's right here for me. If you don't see it in your After Effects panels, you're just going to go to Window and then Project, right here. I know this may be redundant for you advanced users, but for the newbies, I'm going to cover these little steps just to make it a little easier. So once you have your project bin open, we're going to right click and do New Composition. This pops open a dialog box where we can type in our comp. Let's call it main comp. Let's do 1920 by 1080 for the resolution. You can do any resolution you want, 4K, 3840 by 2160, doesn't matter. But from there on, we're going to change it up a little bit. So frame rate should be at 60 frames per second. So if yours is at 23.976, let's change that to 60. Resolution full, start time code 0, and duration 10 seconds. Let's keep it at 10 seconds for now. We'll probably change it to 5 later on. But depending on how long we want to make this animation, 10 seconds is a good place to start. So click OK. Blank file. So the first thing we need is that square shape that showed up on screen. So at the top of After Effects, you see a toolbar. So grab the little ellipse tool right here. You may see a rectangle tool, but if you click and hold, this is a good way to change your shapes, but we need the rectangle tool. So let's grab the rectangle tool and hold shift on your keyboard and drag out a shape, or a square in this case. Right now, my square is a little different than yours. Maybe it has a stroke with an empty inside. This is not what we want. We want a filled inside without a stroke. So what we're going to do is go up to the top here. You'll see a fill and a stroke option. Click the stroke text, which will pop open another dialog box. And from there, we can turn the stroke off, no stroke, and then we can go back to fill and turn the fill on with this little solid color. So click the fill text, click the solid thing. Now we have a solid fill color. Now let's start with the color we want. It doesn't matter. You click the fill color and then it pops up in another dialog box. Let's find like a good starting color, which is, it doesn't really matter too much. This is totally fine. Boom, there is our thing. Now once you do that, you have this shape here. You see down here in your layer panel, the shape has appeared. So we're going to click on the shape and we're going to actually take the anchor point of the shape and throw it into the center of the shape just because it makes me feel better. So up here in your tool panel, you'll see this thing called pan behind. Click on pan behind. Grab your anchor point and you can move it now. Hold Control on your keyboard and it will automatically ping to a point on the shape. And so let's ping it to the middle of the shape. Good for me. So now we need to align the shape to the middle of the composition. So that's where our final place where the shape will be when it's all done. So we're going to click on the safe guides right here, the safe margins, title action safe. So click down on this little object right here. It's like a little grid looking thing, and click title action safe. And we can either drag this to the middle with our selection tool right here, or we can go to Align. So go to Window and then go to Align. It's already turned on, it looks like. Turn on Align. Yep, there it is. And we will center this shape right there. So now it's in the center of our composition, right where we want it. All right, so now turn off your title and action safe because we really don't need it anymore. We're going to grab Shape Layer 1, and we're going to drop down on this arrow and then drop down on Contents, and then drop down on Rectangle. From here, you can drop down on Rectangle Transform or Transform Rectangle, and we will click this little stopwatch for position right here, which creates a keyframe. We'll drag this keyframe down in our timeline, let's say about 2.5 seconds to about right here. Drag our little cursor down there as well. Then we will also keyframe the scale, and we will keyframe the rotation. And that's all we need so far. So next is we're going to work backwards in time. So from Comp 1, you can see it ends up here, and then it should be right here and then off the screen. So we work backwards in time to dissect this animation. So At, I say, about 1 second, it needs to be here, which automatically creates another keyframe for us. And then at 0, it's going to be like up here somewhere, kind of off screen. So it like goes in and flies over, just like that. And from here, for the rotation, it needs to be rotated back a little bit to about right there. So it's going to rotate from there. Now, if we look at our original, how many times does it rotate? It goes to here, and then it actually just flips over on its side, it looks like. All right, we'll do that. So we just need to rotate it back just a little bit. So just about like right there. So it needs to rotate right there. And then from there, it's going to rotate a whole bunch more. So we'll flip it over a few times. Just like that. And once it's up here, let's zoom out a little bit. I'm just using the scroll wheel on my mouse. Move this up a little more, and we're going to take the scale. We're going to click the keyframe one more time for the scale, and then we're going to go back in time again and scale it down to about right there. So it's like this, and then like that. So now we can highlight all of these keyframes. We're going to right-click the keyframes, go to Keyframe Assistant, and click Easy Ease. And once you click Easy Ease, it changes the keyframes to this little hourglass shape, and it kind of like makes the animation a little smoother, which is what we want. So now what we're going to do is make this animation a lot faster. Right now it's 2.5 seconds. We want it to be about 1.5 seconds. So we'll grab this keyframes right here. We'll drag it back real fast. A little too fast, I think. Right here. And this can finish up right around past 1.5 seconds. Just like so. And now what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all of our keyframes, click this button right here, which is our graph editor, and we will edit this graph. But right before we edit this graph, your graph may look a little different than mine. Right now I have the speed graph selected. If you do not, what you're going to do is you're going to go down to here to choose graph type and options and click the speed graph. You may be on value graph, it may be set to auto. Click the speed graph to show what I'm showing. So now that you have your speed graph showing, we can start editing these points. So what you're going to do is you're going to zoom in on your graph a little bit with this little draggy wheel thing down here. So we're going to grab these points right here, and we're going to pull this little anchor pin thingy back and pull this one back right here, which edits all of our little points all at once. And this edits the dynamicness of the animation. That's pretty good so far. You can edit this however you like. And I kind of just play with it until it's what I want. That's not too bad. Maybe we want to reduce this one a little bit and pull this one back a little bit so it actually comes in a little slower. Not bad. If we look at our original, we can see it's fairly similar. Cool. Now turn off your graph editor, and maybe we'll change the position of this a little bit. Bring it down a little more, about right here. So that looks a lot better. Now what we need to do is to take this square, and we need to curve the edges. So what we're going to do is go into rectangle path, drop down on this arrow, and we'll grab the roundness, and just make it super round, kind of like this. So whoop, whoop, just like that. And I do sound effects. I'm sorry in advance, but it's just kind of my thing. So this is looking pretty good so far. But I might want to change this up just a little bit. Maybe the ending scale needs to be a little bigger. Grab this scale, scale it up a little bit. This scale right here needs to be a little larger. Let's do like this. And the starting scale can be around 75%. Now these are all at your discretion. Does not matter to me. Whatever you like. That looks pretty good right there. Let's do that. All right. So now we need to do one more little keyframe animation to finish this off. What we're going to do is go to the end of our timeline and click T for opacity with the shape layer 1 selected. Click T and keyframe your opacity. drag this keyframe back a little bit and turn the opacity down to 0. So this animation is just going to fade out at the end, right there. We'll highlight these keyframes and do keyframe easy ease, keyframe assistant and easy ease, just like last time. And it just disappears on the spot. So now and then what we're going to do is start to duplicate this to create that wave looking animation that we saw before. So grab shape layer 1 and hit Control D. Drag this down your timeline a little bit and go up to the fill and change the color just by a hair. And if you do this a few times, Control D, drag it down your timeline, change the fill by a hair, Control D, drag it down your timeline, change the fill just by a hair, change this fill a little more, change this fill a little more to really get the separation of the colors, change this fill a little more, and Control D one more time, change the fill just by a hair. So now you can see that it's like just like before. And you can do this as many times as you want. So let's do another one, and we'll change it to a different shade of purple, more of a pink. You can do any color you want, doesn't matter. So on this last one though, we're gonna click U on our keyboard with shape layer 6 selected, which is our newest one that should be the last one that shows up. Click U, shows all of our keyframes. We're gonna delete the opacity keyframes. So when it's at 100% right here, we're gonna delete these keyframes and make sure our opacity is set to 100%. So when all of these fly on screen, this is the last one left. So that's how you make that wave animation we saw before. It's a little different than my original, because that is all selective of the keyframes. This one's a little smaller on screen, but it relatively does the same thing. So now we need a logo in here to show up on this piece of animation. So I'm just going to drag any old logo I have on my desktop, and I keep a logo folder saved away for all my work purposes. So it's really easy for me to grab a logo. You can use your own logo, you can download a logo, doesn't matter. And the logo I'm going to bring in is, I guess, this logo right here. Doesn't matter what it is. There's no purpose or reason I'm choosing this logo. It's the first one that I saw. Then what I'm going to do is actually open up my effects and presets panel, which is window effects and presets, and I'm going to change the logo to white because it looks a little better. So fill effect in effects and presets, drag it onto here, and open my effect control, and then change it to white. It just looks a little better on purple. So boom, 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 boom. Just like so. Now what we're going to do is take shape layer 6 and we're going to duplicate it. Control D on our keyboard like anything else. We're going to drag it above the lift logo, or this could be your logo, doesn't matter, and grab the lift logo and go over here to track matte. Now if you don't see this little track matte option on your layer panel, over here in the gray column you'll just right click, go to columns, and then do modes, which will turn on your track matte option. So right click, columns, and modes. Now with that turned on, we're going to go to track matte on the lift logo, drop down and click alpha matte shape layer 7, which means the logo will only show through the shape above me. So this means when this goes on screen, it's going to show the logo right there. And it'll give this a little bit of an accent. We're going to hit P on our keyboard with the logo selected, click the stopwatch for position, go back in time when it's a little bit off screen, and just move it over some. We'll highlight both of these keyframes, right-click Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease, jump into our graph editor, highlight everything, pull in this little piece to give the little bit of motion to our animation, and woof, probably a little too much. Back this off on the timeline, just like that. Maybe it ends a little farther away. That looks nice. Play with your keyframes until it looks nice. And that looks pretty cool. Now we need those accent animations that we saw in the previous one. So as you can see, there's 2 little circles that pop out right here, right there, 4 circles in total, and these cool little lines that draw across the screen. Now let's start with the circles. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our little shape tool up here in our tool panel, click and hold and grab the ellipse tool. Then we'll drag out an ellipse with shift held on our keyboard to make it like a good sized thing. We'll take our fill color and change it to white, just so it stands out. Now what we're going to do is grab our shape layer 8. We'll change the color of the layer right here with this little icon to, I don't know, green, so it stands out inside of our layer panel. We're going to click down this little down arrow. We're going to click down on contents, and we're going to click on ellipse. Once ellipse is highlighted, you'll click the add button right here, which after you do that, you can go up to another ellipse right here and click and add another ellipse, which adds another line you can see in the middle of our ellipse right here, which is basically another circle. Then you'll click add one more time, and then you'll click, where's it at? Merge paths. That's the one you want. Drop down on merge paths and go to mode and do subtract, which basically means I will cut through this thing with a ellipse under here. So go back in our timeline. It doesn't matter where it is really. We'll drop down on ellipse path number 1. We will keyframe the size, make it a little larger, go back in time, and keyframe the size down to 0. Then we'll take ellipse path 2. We will keyframe the size down to 0, go forward in time, and keyframe the size past the size of the first ellipse. So basically, it grows together but grows a little larger. But then we'll highlight these keyframes and offset them just by a hair. So what's happening is the keyframes both ellipses are growing, but the one below it is cutting through it. So it eventually just kind of goes through it and does that. We'll highlight all of these keyframes that we just created, right click, keyframe assistant, and easy ease. So now you have this cool little bubble effect that just pops out. As easy as that. Then what we'll do is we'll grab the end of this layer, drag it down to here, grab the end of the layer at the very end over here, and drag it down to there. Now you have this little shape you can copy and paste around your project to make a little ellipse pops out. So maybe we want it to pop out right here. It happens here. Oop, grab our anchor point real fast with our pan behind tool, drag this anchor point into the middle of this thing so it's easy to move. Click your pointer tool or click V on your keyboard for your selection tool. Let's move it right here. And maybe what we'll do is click Control D on our keyboard to duplicate this layer, drag it down our timeline a little bit, and maybe we'll change the color to a bright red or something. So it does this. Move it off to the side right here, just like that. Maybe we'll highlight both these layers, copy and paste it onto our timeline. So Command V or Command C and V or Control C and V on a PC, Command V on a Mac, blah, blah, blah. Maybe we'll move both of these right here. Maybe we'll take the red one, which is this one, and we'll change it to like, I don't know, yellow or, well, heck, orange is kind of cool. Maybe we'll move this one back in time a little further, move these around, and now we have this little like thing right there. And that's how you make those little ellipse bubbles. It's really simple, nothing too crazy. Now we need those lines we saw before. So in Comp 1, we can see these lines that draw out like this. These are actually, in my opinion, a little easier to make. So what we're going to do is grab our pen tool right here, click it, and then we'll just start click and dragging out a nice curved line. So we'll drag this out, drag this out, drag this out, drag this out. And maybe what we'll do is we'll click Shift, click on this point and move it around. Move this one up right here, move this one right here. And you want to manipulate this path to where it looks kind of nice. All right, so take your fill up here, click the fill and turn it off, and turn your stroke on. And if you see what's happening here, we're making like a stroke that's gonna, and this is the path that the line will draw out. So we'll click on shape layer 12, which is our new thing. We'll change the color of this shape to red so it stands out. So we know these are our lines. Go drop down on the shape, drop down on contents, drop down on shape 1, which is the shape 1 we just created, drop down on path, and click our path again so we can actually change it. This is here, this is here. I want a nice elegant curve that will draw out pretty seamlessly. Cool, that looks not too shabby. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add one thing to make this really awesome. Oh, actually two things. We're going to click Add right here, and we're going to go to Trim Paths. Click Trim Paths, which adds this neat effect we'll use later. Then drop down on the stroke and change the line cap to round cap, which just rounds the edges of our stroke. So drop down on Trim Paths and take the end and bring it down to 0%. Keyframe 0%. And go down our timeline to the end of the animation where lift kind of appears or your logo appears, and bring the end keyframe percent all the way to 100%. which is the line being drawn out. Now this line should start drawing out right about there when the shapes come on screen, so this is why this keyframe begins here. Now we're going to keyframe our start keyframe and drag it out and keyframe or drag this back up to 100%. Then what we'll do is grab these two keyframes and offset it just a little bit. So it draws out like so. We'll highlight everything, right click keyframe assistant and easy ease. So we can change these keyframes a little bit, drag this out a little more, give it a little more time, just like so. And one more thing, we'll grab this shape layer, we'll click T on our keyboard for when it starts, keyframe the opacity, go down in our timeline a little bit, drag it down to 0%, so it kind of just fades on the screen really fast, and off the screen, we'll keyframe the opacity one more time by clicking this little shape button right here to keyframe it, and go down in our timeline and take it down to 0%. So it kind of fades on, fades off. Real quick, we'll drag this layer to here, and if you don't want to drag it, you can always use a shortcut. You can do Alt or Command bracket, Alt for a PC, Command for a Mac, and it closes off the layer for you automatically. And real quick, I'm going to clean up this path layer a little bit. So drop back down on the shape, drop down on contents, drop down on path, click path, and I can actually manipulate this really quickly. Give it a more of a smoother path. Yep, just like that. And now what we're going to do, we're going to duplicate shape layer 12. So Control D, drag this down in our timeline. So there's like 2 of them happening. We're going to change the color to a different stroke color. Maybe green. That looks kind of nice. And then we'll click down on our path. Contents, shape layer 1, path, and we'll just change where these little points are in the timeline. So this one, maybe this one kind of comes off screen right here, then goes up here, then goes down here. Something like this. Up here and then up here. And flip this one around. Makes this like nice arc. It's like right up here. And you can do all kinds of weird stuff with this. Change this around. That one's way too bumpy. That one's not curvy enough. That doesn't look too bad. Yeah, I can deal with that. Click U on our keyboard, drag these keyframes out a little more so it takes a little longer for it to complete its animation. And just like so. Maybe a little earlier. And we are almost done. All of that is happening in such great time. So in Cop 1, we can see that there's this like shapes that fly onto the back of the screen and then fly away. The only reason I do this is so the animation can happen and disappear like that. Maybe reveal footage under it. You could be done right here, or this is just like what flies onto your footage in your screen, because this back of this is just transparent. It can be anything. So you could easily take shape layer 6 and do a scale animation where it scales down to nothing, which you would also have to duplicate that animation onto shape layer 7. No big deal. So what you could do is just take shape layer 7, take the parenting tool, which is this little squiggly line, and ping it to shape layer 6, keyframe the scale, go down and take the scale down to 0%. And then highlight these, keyframe assistant, easy ease, which means this will just scale down like that. Really simple. So when it's done, it just disappears. Super, super simple like that. Or we can make that, fly off the screen animation, which we'll do right now. So we are going to highlight all of these. right here. All these shapes we've created, everything's organized, and we're going to right click and pre-compose. Opens up a dialog and call this animation. Doesn't matter what it's called. Click OK. Now what we're going to do is we're going to right click, new solid, and call it BG for background, and click OK because the color doesn't matter. Then we'll drag background under animation. Now we have a solid color for the background. What we're going to do now is click P on our keyboard for the background, open up position, keyframe the position with the stopwatch, go back in time, and drag it off the screen with our mouse with shift held to keep it straight so it like flies on the screen like that. We're going to highlight these keyframes, right click, keyframe assistant, and easy ease, open up our graph editor, go ahead and highlight both of these, drag out this and drag out this so we have this cool looking flowy animation while it flies on. And as you can imagine, what we're going to do is we're going to drop a fill onto here, turn off the fill with the little FX button right there, click the eyedropper and make it the same color, turn it back on. Then we're going to drag this down our timeline, about right there, and click Control D to duplicate the background, and bring the one below it backwards in time, and then change the fill color to whatever you want. I'm going to do like a off red this time, and then duplicate it again, drag the one below it back in time, and I'll change this one to orange, and maybe change the red one to a different color, well, heck, I don't know what matches. Yellow. And maybe highlight all three of these and drag them back in time so they happen a little earlier. So just like so, or maybe a little later in time. That looks great in my opinion. Then what we can do is duplicate the top layer, which is the first background, which is the black one. Control D to duplicate it. We will drag it above the logo and work in reverse to make it disappear. So click U on your keyboard to show the animation keyframes. And we'll take the first keyframe, which is where it starts, and we will drag it past the last keyframe and make it where it ends. So it starts on the screen and then turns and goes away, just like so. So this goes away. And now what we need to do is take animation and all these backgrounds, right click and pre-compose one more time. It doesn't matter what it's called, so click OK. And that's on screen. Then we'll do the same thing as before and use track matte to make this disappear. So this is only pre-comp, which is the entire animation, should only show when background is on the screen. So once we've done that, we can see here that when this animation starts to happen and it goes away, it's making this entire thing disappear. Turn the background off, we can see that it's making this entire thing disappear. But problem is, it's this whole animation that starts in the beginning is not showing anymore because this background is not on top of it. So an easy fix for that is to grab the end of the layer and drag it back in time, just like that. So we still have the beginning animation. And maybe we can grab these keyframes and drag it down our timeline pretty far. So this thing finishes out, sits there for a second, then flies off screen. It also scales down as well. So what we need to fix though is we need to highlight these keyframes and fix our graph editor really fast. Click our graph, you can see that it's kind of loopy. Grab this and do this. Just like before. Because when you flip the keyframes around, it freaks out the graph. And now we have this. So it comes on screen, stays there for a second and goes away. Maybe we can like scale it down a little bit. Just like so. Nice sequence of animation, not too bad. And the final step to top it all off is to render this or highlight everything, right click, pre-compose one more time to finish off the composition. Click enter, makes one final comp that's all encased in this one layer. Go to effects and presets, type CC force motion blur, drop it onto here, which makes the entire thing blur. And now what we can do is actually change the length of our composition. So this thing ends at around 4.5 seconds. We will take our little, like if you're zoomed in, you want to zoom out on your timeline, grab the end of this little blue thing right here, drag it back in time to where it ends, go to composition at the top of your dialog or window, then do trim comp to work area, which will trim this down to the exact time that this animation is. So now we can preview render this, and there's a slight motion blur on our animation, which looks super, super nice. And as we can see, there is a nice logo animation that you can now use in all of your videos. And that is it. That is how you make this cool looking logo animation that we saw in this video. As always, I am Max. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of the channel. I guess hit that like button, leave a comment. That helps YouTube say this is a good video and it makes more, or makes it seen more. That's how the algorithm works, I guess. But all jokes aside, thank you for watching. And I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.